Were you at home?
I think we're in that.
Oh,
Oh, Roy.
even the things I'm putting you through.
Roy is online.
No, it's not. It could have waited.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. We are now live and over to you, Chair Harrington.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the month of November. My goodness, the year 2022 is flying by. Welcome to the Washington County Board of Commissioners work session this Tuesday, November 1st. This is Chair Catherine Harrington. I'm joined in the work session room with Commissioner Pam Treese, Vice Chair Commissioner Jerry Willey, and Commissioner Nafisa Fai. Commissioner Roy Rogers is joining us by Zoom, as is our CEO of Clean Water Services, Ms. Diane Taniguchi-Dennis. We have our County Administrative Officer, Tanya Angie, and our County Counsel, Tom Carr, here in the room with us, as well as many bright and shining faces, including members of our community who I always appreciate coming and joining us in person, as well as those who are with us online in our hybrid meetings. So we have a very full day today. And the first item on our agenda is board and leadership communication. So who would like to start us off this November 1st?
I'm not ready.
I can go.
Thank you, Commissioner Treese.
Just trying to be polite here. It was a busy week last week. Good morning. It's nice to see everybody on this first day of November. It's hope you all had a good Halloween. I gave out big bars and it was fun.
we ran out of coinage.
Oh, that's right.
Because we had so many kids. It was a blast.
Well, I think the word gets out on the street when you give out something that kids want. So anyway, it was like I said, it was a busy week. I met with Felicita Monteblanco and Doug Menke and some others to tour Cooper Mountain Nature Park. They're looking at some possibilities of expansion there, and those things are under discussion, and they just wanted to make sure that I was aware, and I'm sure all of you will be contacted and go on a tour. It's a beautiful place. It's one of the few prairie sites, and it's very interesting to look to see and to understand the difference, for example, between a savanna and a prairie, to see the birds, to see the endangered wildflowers that are there. So I would encourage you all to take advantage of that.
Did you see any deer?
I didn't see deer.
There are a lot of them there.
Yeah, I think we were stomping too loud. I did not see the or the deers. I attended the WMIS meeting. This is the study of Highway 26, and it was an interesting meeting. We started out with just understanding what our mission was. Again, this is only our second meeting, so it was a little bit of level setting in the beginning. But one of the things that we dealt with a lot in terms of discussion was what the different perceptions of that highway is, what the different perceptions are, and how they influence our thinking there. For example, I think the further out you live, you may think of it more as a thoroughfare to locations more distant, 7-8 miles away. Whereas if you live in Beaverton, it's part of a network that you utilize to get from point A to point B, maybe even doing your errands. So those were some of the things that we dealt with. Councillor Pace brought up the concept of putting buses on the shoulders, and some of those things were expected, but we're just getting our feet, so to speak, in this process. I did mention to you that I needed nominations for the business piece of the committee, and we did not discuss that. So I just want you to know that I don't have any feedback in terms of that piece. MPAC was another robust meeting, and we talked about the land swap. We're going to hear about that today, so I won't go into a lot of detail here, other than to say that, as I'm sure you are all aware, that the Clackamas County Commissioners are not in favor of this land swap. I did speak up and talk about the fact that we have a regional need for housing. We have historically, Tigard has been successful in their development in this area. We're on the cusp of being able to do this again. So I just wanted to get that out into the universe at the same time. So we're going to hear much more about that this morning. Is it this morning or this afternoon? I think it's this afternoon.
1 p.m. time certain.
Thank you, from Andy Shaw. The other piece that came up was TriMet's Forward Together concept. We had a presentation here about that from Grant. One of the, I did mention in that meeting that we also need to be looking at the pink lines, which are the lines that are going away. So that was, I wanted to emphasize that. And I was also asked to mention the fact that if that line that goes by the Brookwood Library goes away, it makes it very difficult for people to get to that library. And it was clear that they had taken that under consideration and are really working hard to make a difference there. I attended the WEA forum on was it Thursday? Thank you. Thursday of last, I see some nodding heads out here, of last week. It was with Congresswoman Bonamici, which is always a treat to see her and to listen to her. She talked a lot about her work on STEM in relationship to education and the CHIPS and Science Act. She talked a lot about childcare and other education issues. It was all pretty high level, but she took a lot of questions from the group. So she did a great job. And I appreciated the fact that so many of our government relations folks were there too, because it's a great opportunity to make those contacts. Commissioner Fye and I went on a tour of Beaverton. I may leave that to you to describe here because I'm taking a lot of your time. So, but it was with Mayor Beatty, and it was a great tour. Got to see a lot of different things, and I really appreciate it. As a result of that, I'm going to be attending the home plate ribbon cutting this afternoon. As soon as we end here, I'll be going over there. I also had coffee with Soporn Chang. She's the director of Business Oregon. We met at a reception earlier in October and just wanted to have an opportunity to get to know her better and what her direction is. Obviously, a lot of her work is hinging upon the November 8th election. So there's a lot to discuss there as well. And on Friday, I had an interview with Eric Schmidt on TVC TV. It was a good interview. He's great to talk with. He does a good job. And I was really pleased to be able to talk about housing, homelessness, mental health, CAT, all sorts of different things. So I was really pleased to have the opportunity. I met yesterday with Representative Ken Helm. And my goal here is to make sure I'm developing relationships, as all of us do, with our Washington County legislators. And part of the reason that I really wanted to meet with him is his interest in water. And based on what we learned in Copenhagen, I just wanted to circle back there and talk with him. I also attended the Metro Recycling and Garbage Facilities Plan. It was a local government roundtable yesterday. Tom Eggleston was there, and the team provided me with good information to be sharing in our table talks. But the bottom line is we're talking to Metro about the fact that we need more facilities. We need access for everyone in Washington County, but particularly our low-income people, our seniors, and those who have difficulty going all the way to North Portland or other locations for recycling opportunities.
I somehow missed that meeting. Not sure. Thank you.
Well,
I'm really glad you were there.
yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, in my small group was Tim Rosner and Micah Paulson, Tim Rosner from Sherwood and Micah Paulson from King City. So it was good to have the discussions there and to hear what the issues were. The concept of transparency of rate setting was a big issue for a lot of people too. So I want to highlight that. This week, I mentioned I've got the home plate ribbon cutting, and then I've got MPAC Coordinating Committee. We're meeting on November 9th, so the coordinating committee is meeting this week, and the MPAC meeting was conflicting with the holiday weekend, so we're meeting on November 9th, and I'll be updating you on that. I'm also having lunch with Virginia Bruce this weekend. Before I close, I just want to say a couple things here. We've got an agenda today that's got some really interesting topics. We've got a proclamation. We're reviewing a lot of work that has been done by Latricia's group. We're entering into a world where there's some sensitivity here, and I would just encourage us to be really careful about the words that we use, how we approach this with each other and with our population base, both employees and outside. So I'm looking forward to the discussions, but I just, like I said, I thought about it a lot over the weekend and thought, I'm just going to, before we get into the meat of this, I'd like to help set the stage as we get into this. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll talk more about that
Yes.
a little bit here. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Thank you,
Chair
Commissioner
Harrington.
Fry.
That was quite. I'll start off with the Beaverton tour that Commissioner Terrace and I had the opportunity to partake with Mayor Beatty and the Office of Mayor Beatty's team. And it was a really great long tour. We walked for hours and I think we saw as we expected a lot of the challenges from a transportation perspective. Myself sitting on JPAC and farming and living on Farmington and utilizing TV Highway. I think it was really smart of Mayor Beatty to focus on the transportation challenges in Beaverton. So while we didn't have a near-death experiences, as Mayor Beatty would have liked us, so that we, the county, can act on TV Highway challenges in Farmington, Stephen Roberts. But we did see some challenges and some things that we can improve on and hope for the best, especially where Farmington and TV Highway connect. We did see some disconnect between the county managed lighting, street lighting versus the city managed lighting. So we'll have a discussion, Stephen, with you to talk through more about that.
Street lights, right?
Street lights, yeah. But it was a really good, sidewalk issues we saw as expected on Canyon Road. We also saw the differences between the sidewalks of the city managed versus county, and the state, where the state ODOTs intersect. So I just wanted to just share that, to appreciate the mayor's office, that we did hear them and we did see the challenges, but we also saw a lot of success in Beaverton that exists in collaboration with the county too. So I just want to extend our county staff working in partnership with the cities and collaborating on these issues. They're really appreciative of the work we're doing. I say we, but it's really the staff. So great job, and look forward to that, furthering that partnership. And then last week I also, oops, my computer, let me log back in and get my notes. Last week I also had the committee I sit in is a statewide committee, Maternal Mortality Review Committee. And in that committee, we conduct studies and review each committee meeting 4 or 5 incidents of maternal mortality and severe morbidity in Oregon, maternal morbidity in Oregon. We examine whether social determinants of health are contributing factors to the incidence of maternal mortality and severe maternal morbidity. And then after reviewing all of those deaths, we share the findings and make recommendations and share the information with healthcare providers and facilities, social service providers, law enforcement, and many others, because mothers who die in the hospital, it's not just the hospital that intersects. There's a societal responsibility that needs to be investigated, and then the system to address. So it's really it's a heavy day that day. I think that committee has. I think we're making a difference by stopping further mortalities and morbidities. And then I had our monthly town hall for District 1 last week.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
How did it go?
it went really well.
It was
I
You
think
had a big crowd who registered in advance.
we had, yeah, we get in emails. That reminds me, Chair Harrington, I want to extend the people who had a hard time registering that emailed Brenda and I. The Eventbrite, we set it to 100 and we reached 100 the day of. So people didn't have the opportunity to register again. And we're getting emails, a lot of emails saying that they tried to register the day off and they couldn't get in. We'll try to change that. And a lesson learned is when 100 people register, not all 100 will show up. So that's a lesson that we learned, that we'll just set an unlimited people to register, not necessarily 100. But so far for my almost 2 years as a commissioner, the 100 method, we haven't had a problem except this year. So we'll change that, and I extend my apologies to you and look forward to seeing everyone next month if they have the opportunity to attend, but we are having next month a town hall. We had 100 people register. At the highest number we had was 65, but I think 10 of us were staff, county staff and interpreters, and myself and Brenda. So we have 55 actual residents that attended at the event. And I think 3 people were really vocal about their anger about the Beaverton encampment. But there were people who were also saying, you know, I sort of feel
Beaverton Creek.
Beaverton Creek. What did I say?
Beaverton.
Oh, Beaverton Creek, not Beaverton.
Beaverton's not a homeless camp.
Huh?
Evidently Beaverton's not homeless. So go ahead.
Yes, yeah, Beaverton Tour, Beaverton Creek, they're all mushing together, but people are not mad at Beaverton, the city of Beaverton. What I meant is people are frustrated, especially the surrounding neighbors who live by the Beaverton Creek encampment are frustrated, but not all of those frustrations aren't like, you know, as while some people want us to arrest everyone or close that down, some are really feeling guilty of looking people through their window who are taking shelter in the streets, and really feel frustrated that way. So I think people want, I couldn't give them, you know, I don't have the capability to arrest anybody, as we all know. And while we have Martin versus Boise, we cannot close that encampment. Our hands are tied. I did let the constituents know, and whoever is watching, that January 10th, Washington County will have a work session focused on time, place, and manner. I did encourage the constituents to come to our meetings, our regular business meetings, to voice their concerns. I know they are really good at sending their concerns and questions to me or to Brenda or to the District 1 email. But I think it's also good to hear from them as a board. So I think as much as people can participate and voice their concerns, the better. And I send the message that advocacy works. This is how you get heard, and how you be part of the problem solve, while others want us to just solve this problem for themselves and not engage them, but I think collaboration works and I think partnership works, and this is how we can make a difference. So I think it went well. Commissioner Treese was able to join online temporarily, and I think I don't know who else was there. I think Mayor Beatty was going to try to join. I wasn't sure if she was able to, but the media said they were going to join. But I think I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but it went well. I think it's important to hear people's frustration. And it's important that people let us know how they feel and how we can help them. And we're going to work together and we're going to try to problem solve this. Because nobody wants to be homeless and nobody wants to be a drug user. And I also understand their frustration that they don't want the disruption near their neighborhoods. So that's how we went with that town hall. And then the next day, I had the opportunity to put together some beds with Commissioner Willie and myself at Cloverleaf Shelter. There's going to be about 55, I'm looking at Julie, 55 beds. And we had the opportunity to actually see what's like to put the beds together and had a conversation with the executive director there. And it was a really, while we were, the solution to homelessness, everybody knows, is housing. And the county, even though on my town hall, we focused on shelters and alternative shelters, there are a lot of affordable housing in production. There are a lot of houses that are being built for affordable housing. And I think seeing where people can shelter with the severe weather, it was a beacon of hope to see that 55 people will have a bed this bad weather coming up this year, and look forward to seeing what else we can create. We're working hard, and I appreciate the county saying this is all hands on deck kind of a problem solving and figuring out, not leaving any alternative solution and saying everything will work and making it work. That was my first time I got lost. As staff know, being there, I had no idea that there's a building tucked in that area through that parking lot. So, but thank you to the staff and thank you to the media who joined us that day. And with that, I turn it to you.
Roy, you want to jump in here? You want me to go first?
It doesn't matter, Jerry. What would you like to do?
I'll follow up with Nafisa because we did a couple of things together there. The Cloverleaf Shelter is where what Nafisa was referring to. And yes, getting into the fairgrounds, there's a couple of ways that you can do that are not published. So
Not published. Did you hear that? So it was not my fault.
no, I've for the 4-H weigh-ins last year, I had to come in a different way, and yeah, I got lost on it. So anyway, that was fun. The Cloverleaf building is perfectly suited for our 50-bed homeless shelter for the winter because it has large restrooms, has shower facilities for both men and women, has a kitchen facility. So it's a good place, and we should be very proud to have an opportunity to protect 50 lives from the harshness of winter for the next 6 months. So that's a good thing. Pam, you referred to a transportation meeting that you went to, and you talked about Counselor Beach Pace was there.
West Side Multimodal.
Yeah. So where was that? Because
Where was
I
it?
went to
It's
I went to a transportation meeting yesterday at that was sponsored by the Washington County Chamber. And we had ODOT and Metro representatives and some other things that sounded a lot like what you talked about.
This is a study. So it's a series of meetings with recommendations at the end.
Okay. All right. Well, it was,
By Metro and ODOT.
Thank you.
we got a lot of good information yesterday on the same thing, that you know, for years, we went, and when we did the TV highway study initially several years ago, it was identified that a good number of the cars that are on TV highway are jump on, jump off. So they're not, as it used to be, we used to go down TV highway all the way to Beaverton and jump on 217. For the most part, that doesn't happen. 26 is the same thing now. And I'm guilty of it as well. I jump on 26 at Jackson School and jump off at Murray on a regular basis. So yeah, I get that, dealing with those.
I would say you're not guilty of that. It's just a usage pattern.
Well, okay, so I admit to being that, whatever it is. Let me go back to my notes real quick. Also, last week was the 9th Annual Manufacturers Symposium. That we had a panel of folks that talked about what the CHIPS Act and exploring Oregon's opportunity regarding chips. And it was very good to hear from them. They were very positive about that legislature has now kind of heard the call that we do not have any industrial land, or very, very, very little. We're not even competitive. We're not competitive in the incentives that we put out there and the money that the state is willing to invest to make chips manufacturing again move ahead. So it was very interesting conversation and well attended by everybody around, I think primarily Hillsborough and Washington County. Then I went out to Central Cultural to welcome Peter Brandon. Peter is the new city manager for Cornelius. They hired him from City of Hillsborough. He was in sustainability there. And so that's a good hire. It's going to be fun to work with Peter in Cornelius, and of course, replacing Rob Drake, longtime city manager there, and certainly public servant. So Peter's got his hands full, but he is more than willing to take that on. He's got some great ideas. At the same time, went to the Brookwood Library to say thank you to Carol Reich, who spent 25 years in Hillsborough's library system. And so I've known her a long time, from the 90s when I was first appointed to the library as a city councilor. And so I've known Carol a long time. It was good. She had lots of good friends and lots of good memories. So we certainly welcome her into the retirement environment. I think she's going to enjoy that a lot. And of course, one of the top things she was going to do next is read a book. So anyway, it was great to see that. Went out to Adelante Majadas yesterday. I hadn't been there since they started their remodeling project several years ago. It was really great. Talked to several of the preschool teachers that are out there. They do such an amazing job. And of course, everything is miniature. So the chairs are about this tall. And it was just fun to go out and talk to them. They have such a passion for those kids. And so it's a great service, as well as the kitchen that is available for not only cooking classes, but to provide some opportunities for people who want to provide items for the farmers market, but don't have a place to cook them. They can come in there and use their cooking facility. So it's very cool. They're doing a great job, and it was fun to connect back up with Bridget, their executive director. She will have been there. How many years did she tell me? 20 plus years. Yeah, it's been there a long time. She's already counting the days. I think she's she's a few years away from 65, but that's her target. Anyway, let's see, met with Sevenberry Trail Foundation folks yesterday. We're trying to move ahead on the timing of a grant, working with Stephen, certainly, and Aaron and Diami. Thank you very much for you taking the time of doing that. And it was, we've got some work to do, both the county and the Sevenberry Trail Foundation, to get ready for this, but at least there is opportunity out there, and I'm looking forward to that. Have a fair board meeting tomorrow night. Public safety coordinating committees interviewing on Thursday, so I'll be in those interviews most of the day. And then heading to Salem on Friday for the Forest Trust Lands Advisory Commission. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Rogers, how about you?
Well, good morning. My wife and I were exposed to a COVID situation over the weekend, so out of a abundance of caution, I'm not sitting there with you today, and I'm not going to sit there with you tomorrow. You'll see me by my virtual. I just have a little bit of a cough and a little bit of a runny nose, but not enough to show any indications. Last week,
Commissioner Rogers, can you get the mic a little closer to you perhaps?
and speak up a little more. That's probably best too. Trying to preserve my voice so I don't have any issues. But last week, I did attend the WEA board meeting. Interesting, at least 3 of you are pretty familiar with that. It's a lot of normal business that they do with their various committees. And so I was getting acquainted with that. Thursday morning, I listened in to the 2023 RTP update at JPAC. Catherine was there as our chair, and those are interesting meetings. It's hard sometimes to hear though when they get into the little breakout groups, but it's on high capacity, that particular one. So that was interesting. Yesterday, as Jerry indicated, we both sat in on the Hillsborough, they call it Transportation Committee. He talked a little bit about it, and he told you who was there, and it's always interesting to hear updates on that corridor. My only contribution is that I always think that all of the corridors have to somehow work together. It's just one piece of a bigger puzzle, and I continue to say that, and I guess I always will. Tomorrow, I need to bug out of our meeting just for a little bit. I missed our last meeting with work systems, and it's an executive meeting. Since we changed our Thursday to a Wednesday, I have a little bit of business I need to do with them just during the 11:30 to about noon. And then I'm sorry, Greg, we were unable to meet. We will meet next week, and I'm just being very cautious right now. I don't think I want to infect anybody. That's it.
So I'm sorry, you'll miss a portion at least of our roundtable tomorrow. I'll wrap things up so we can get on to leadership communication and other matters before our 10 o'clock Housing Authority meeting and board meeting. So as mentioned on Thursday, as the alternate to JPAC, I represented you, our board, at the JPAC Metro Council RTP workshop number 5. Thank you, Commissioner 5, for going to each and every one of those preceding. This was I believe the last one in the series. The focus was on transit. They spent the majority of the time having us in a breakout exercise, and there were at least 3 tables. I don't think there were as many people at this workshop as in previous workshops. And they wanted us to take the various corridors that are already enumerated on the high capacity transit planning map and identify which ones are next for planning, and 3 different categories, which when you're given a map of all these lines, it's really, and no other information, it's really hard to just say, well, this one and this one and this one. So in our breakout group, there were at least 2 of us that are very data driven and wanting to make data informed decisions. So we were left wanting. So what we chose to do was to identify what seemed to be a larger next set and focus in on questions that we have for each of those, or other conditions that we think are present in those that could then lead to the categorization. So in the grand sense of things, we failed the assignment. I'm not quite sure how all of the exercise results will be used to help inform the proposed policy as well as identify the next corridors for a specific study. Part of what complicated the choice is that historically, our next corridors have been fixated on light rail, right? Fixed rail. And now with the Powell Division study and the new division BRT, we have another high capacity tool. But we're also, through this RTP, also pursuing enhanced transit. So the solution set is much larger than it has been in the past. In the past, it was one. In the last RTP, we had two. And now we have at least three techniques for applying to whatever the next corridor or two for the next 10 years. So it was quite an assignment. So we'll see how it informs the next work as the RTP tries to come to a close. On Monday, yesterday, I spoke at the Washington County Public Affairs Forum and did my best to enumerate what we've accomplished and where we're going and setting the stage. There were some really great questions that the audience asked, multiple ones that touched on homelessness, elections, addiction treatment, real societal needs. So always a fun bunch, a small group, but you know, a group, yes, a very engaged group. Thank you, Commissioner Terrace. So then I want to mention a couple of other activities that I partook in that centered on homelessness as we do our work in addressing affordable housing and improving or addressing our homeless crises. So on Thursday, I finally had the opportunity for a tour of the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter. And what was really special was getting to have the meeting with the service provider, Greater Good Northwest, and the team there. And they're really such a great, they do a really good job of articulating key messages from the service provider standpoint and using their voice. So echoing some of what we've been hearing from staff, but just so clear that we have an increased population entering homelessness because many folks are aging into homelessness as they're priced out of the market for the home they have had for many years as the price of rental apartments has increased significantly. We do have over 300 members of our community that have rental vouchers in hand and are struggling to find apartments because there is such a shortage of affordable apartments. In addition, criminal background checks are part of the tenant screening process, which there are some folks who are on probation. So they're serving out their time. They're still employed. They need a place to live. But also folks who have in the past served their time. And it's unfortunate that that past history tends to cloud their opportunity for today and moving forward. I myself need to look into Senate Bill 608, the tenant rights, rent stabilization. So anyway, long and short of it, I learned more about screening tenants and how part of our team is working with partners across the region to look at how we might have some initial screening to help. I also learned that the Clackamas County District Attorney has a program of dropping charges that lead to homelessness as people are placed into housing. This is not a homeless court. I made sure to make sure that I was clear on that as well. So anyway, it was a great tour. I appreciated the time, both from the Greater Good Northwest team as well as from our staff, to make sure that my information needs were met. Then on Friday morning, I was taking Friday off, but there was a meeting that really needed to happen. It was a meet and greet with the Metro Supportive Housing Services co-chairs for the Tri-County Planning Body, Matt Chapman and Ebony Brown. Unfortunately, Ebony wasn't able to make it that day because she woke up at her home and it didn't have any running water. So she needed to address that problem. So we'll get together another time. But it's the looking at the kinds of challenges that are common across 2 and/or 3 of the counties, or perhaps just currently experienced in one county that, if not addressed, could become difficult for either or both of the other 2 is important. So it was a good discussion. And I do want to flag, there's a resolution on our board agenda today that is included in our work session packet to bring forward. And it's a resolution that I asked to have placed on today's agenda: consideration of a resolution against hate and election-related violence. And I just want to spend a few minutes here talking about the background of that resolution and why it's timely for us to take this up today. So Ms. Angie is helping me with this with members from our staff as well.
Yeah, I would ask that Ms. Tillman and Mr. Nelson please join.
Oh, they're in the room.
They're in,
Thank
yes.
you. I'm not very good at noticing all that's going on while I'm focused on listening to my colleagues. Pardon me. Good morning.
Good morning.
And happy November to our Chief Equity Officer, Ms. Latricia Tillman, and our Director of Assessment, Taxation, Elections, and other very important general government things, Joe Nelson.
Thank you.
I will mention before they start that Ms. Tillman will be referring to some data. Clerk Moss will be asked to add this information to the packet so members of the public can access that information as well.
Great. Good morning, Chair Harrington, Board, and Commissioner Rogers. I hope you feel better soon. For the record, I'm Latricia Tillman. I'm the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, and I'm just going to share some data that informed staff's interest in bringing this forward. During the 2019 legislative session, the legislature passed Senate Bill 577, and that bill, part of that bill requires the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission to review all data pertaining to bias crimes and non-criminal bias incidents and to report those results to the legislature annually. The most recent annual report covers data on bias crimes and non-criminal bias incidents that occurred in Oregon during 2020 and 2021. And that's the link that I've shared with Clerk Moss, so it can be made available for you and staff and the community. Just want to note that that report compiles data from the bias response hotline established by the Oregon Department of Justice. It also includes bias-related criminal offenses from Oregon's National Incident-Based Reporting System housed within the Oregon State Police, data on prosecution of bias crimes, and arrest data from the National Law Enforcement Data System. So it's serious. This is not anecdotal data. It's serious criminal justice system data. So reports to that hotline increased by 53% during 2020 and 2021. And bias crimes accounted for 28% of reports in both of those years. And Multnomah County had the largest count of reports, followed by Washington County. Bias incidents in schools increased by 300% in that same time period. And there was also a 300% increase in bias incidents targeting hotline advocates between 2020 and 2021, which has continued into 2022. The hotline.
Could you, hotline advocates, who?
So, yeah, thank you. The Criminal Justice Commission has been doing outreach to culturally specific organizations to encourage community members to report bias incidents. And so that's my read of what they're saying.
And they report it to the hotline advocates.
They're encouraging community members to report incidents of bias or bias crime to the hotline.
Thank you.
So thank you for that question. The hotline started collecting data on bias occurrences related to specific global, social, and political events, and saw spikes in anti-Black, African-American bias reporting that corresponded with the Black Lives Matter movement in the summer of 2020. Reports of increasing anti-Asian bias in the spring of 2020, paralleling the beginning of COVID. A rise in doxing leading up to the 2020 US presidential elections. And the anti-Asian bias has continued into 2022.
Could you define doxing as well?
My next point, doxing means, and I had to look it up as well, is searching for and publishing private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. So Black, African-American, and Asian individuals were the most common victims of reported bias incidents, 25% and 12% respectively, and hate crimes, 34% and 12% respectively. Anti-Asian incidents increased by almost 200% overall, and anti-Asian bias crimes increased by 300%. The vast majority of bias crimes against Asian, Black, African-American, Native, Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and Hispanic individuals reported to the hotline in 2021 were motivated by the victim's race. There were some reports by white victims who were targeted by their race, but were instead the majority were based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and religion. Oregon's National Incident-Based Reporting System law enforcement data showed that 300 bias crimes were reported to Oregon law enforcement agencies in 2021. That indicated a 15% decrease in reporting from 2020. But consistent with the hotline pattern, Black, African-American victims, Asian victims tended to be targeted because of their race. White victims, again, targeted because of sexual orientation, ethnicity, national origin, religion, or because they were perceived as Black African-American. So this data shows us that serious incidents of bias and bias crimes are happening here in Washington County and in our state more broadly. And we're also hearing about incidents of bias that staff are experiencing in the course of their work for Washington County. That is anecdotal data. We don't have a system currently for collecting that information. And I'll turn it over to Joe to talk about the experience that's happening within the elections office.
Good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners. For the record, my name is Joe Nelson. I'm the Director of Assessment, Taxation and Election, and thank you for the great introduction. Similar to what we're hearing across the entire country, Washington County is also experiencing an uptick in a lot of, I guess it would be misinformation, malicious intent, tactics, trying to inhibit the fair process of elections. We're having a lot of public interaction. Some of it is just really good where public is concerned and we're addressing the questions. Some of it really is based on misinformation. We're seeing a lot of records requests that are kind of tactical to overwhelm the elections office. We're seeing a uptick in litigation. It's a huge amount of work to try to address that. So far, the media has been really good for the coverage that we're seeing. We had a public test on Friday. The media coverage was excellent. What we're really seeing is this great opportunity for us to review and refine all of our processes. It's bolstering security. We're working with a lot of our law enforcement partners to ensure the safety of the voter, the public, the employees, the ballot processes. Our essential responsibility is voter confidence, voter trust, transparent process. We're here to support the public, okay, and to address some of these things that we're experiencing where we would be in the courtroom and the attorneys would literally point at our elections officials and point them out to the community when there's literally 50 other attendees in the room. It's a method of voter intimidation. Some of the things that we're seeing with the public, some of them are just, like I said, really good, but some of them really have malicious intent. And we're just seeing that. Our staff are having to address that. Our commitment is to this anti-hate resolution, and we're here to support and work with all of our partners, whether it's facilities, law enforcement, or any other partners, to ensure that our public can have a free and open elections process. Any questions?
Go ahead. I have a question. After Commissioner Willie and I were elected our first time, we went to see the election process when it was still at Murray Boulevard. And I was made aware of the tables of 4 people who were dealing with ballots and representatives of each party. And it was a fascinating experience for me. Are you experiencing in that group a reduction of volunteers in relationship to the situation that we face, not just here, but nationally?
I cannot speak nationally. Locally, I have not seen that yet.
Okay, great. That's good to hear.
I will share that while I have seen on the national news individuals placing themselves around ballot entries and using techniques that I find personally intimidating, I'm not aware of folks with guns standing in front of various ballot locations in Washington County. Please correct me if that's not the experience. But I have really learned that as Mr. Nelson mentioned, the actions that others are taking towards our election employees is intended to intimidate. And it's not just the election employees, but across our various departments are seeing this misinformation directed to keep people from voting or to divert their attention. And also we're seeing a lot of misinformation in the advertising for different races and candidates as well. So misinformation is alive and well. Malicious intent here in Washington County towards our employees is unfortunately alive and well. And while our leadership, as well as our employees, as expressed, are incredibly dedicated to serving our community, it is becoming harder and harder for them to do that work. The environment is just flat out difficult. And that's why I feel it's very important for us as a board to speak loudly and proudly in adopting this resolution. Each of the sections is intended to identify the conditions that we find ourselves and our employees find themselves dealing with. So I hope that you all will vote to support this resolution. I want to stop talking because looking at the clock, there's so little time to see if any of you have questions before we move on to our formal meetings. Commissioner Rogers, how about you?
A couple of comments. One, as far as the general tone and the writing, who would be against something that would say we don't like hate and election-related violence? Everybody would support that. There are 2 or 3 sections that I feel do not balance at all, at least where I come from in values. And that is that if we're truly inclusive, these should apply to everybody. We refer to white nationalism, which I do not support, but I calling it out specifically, any kind of nationalism other than American nationalism is a problem. It spells out a couple of times ultra right. I can tell you the ultra left and Antifa is just as problematic as the ultra right. I don't support either side of that spectrum. I think they're both problematic. So 99% of this I'm in favor of, I think it's not balanced at all in a couple of its comments. And so I have difficulty with those sections.
Noted. Anything else?
Yeah, well, I've met with Marty and Latricia, so thank you very much for taking additional time to have this conversation. This, I thought this resolution was going to be basically supportive of our elections division and volunteers. And I think the last section on, I guess it's the second page, I printed it on 2 sides, so I can't tell, but it says everything after now, therefore be it resolved and ordered. Every one of those bullet points was what I expected to see in support of our elections division. Everything before that is pertaining to hate and bigotry, which I don't disagree with either. But I think I have difficulty putting both of these together in the same resolution. We're identifying 2 specific areas that I absolutely think we need to address, but not in the same resolution. So that's my opposition to this. I do have some issues with some of the verbiage, and I do think it's not broad defining. I think it's fairly focused on specific groups, and I certainly understand that, but I don't think it covers all the different groups that are certainly playing in this space in a negative fashion. So I'd very much support our election division and a resolution that talks about that, but not both of them together.
Could I ask for clarification on that comment? I'm looking at the points below. You're saying that the points at the end where it starts at line 20 or 19 on page 2 and then goes through the
He
line.
said he was fine with
Yeah,
those.
sorry,
You're
I pressed
fine
The
with
stuff
those.
above
Okay.
it that
Okay. I
Everything
got it.
below.
Context.
Thank you.
Now, therefore, be it resolved.
the
Okay, you're okay with
context.
that, but not
I'm
with the.
okay with everything after that. I think that's good. I think it's focused on the elections division and certainly what I thought the messaging we were supposed to be doing.
I understand, uh, reflecting, what I heard from you, Commissioner Willie, the be it resolved section, resolved in order, you're fine with. It's the context as represented by all the whereases that you find isn't balanced in its language.
Well, not only balanced, but I would like us to consider this resolution in two resolutions. I think we'd absolutely need to take a position against all the hate and bias that we are starting to experience. I think we need to do that. I just don't want to do them together. I don't think they fit together.
Any other questions or comments before we
Resume. Thank you, Latricia and Joe, for bringing this forward. And I'm sad to hear that our election staff, what you and Chair Harrington described, are going through. And with that, thank you, Chair Harrington, for bringing this resolution forward. I absolutely support it. And it sounds like it's the least we can do for our staff who are going through all this stuff. So with that, I don't have a problem for me with this resolution, and you have my support.
I'm looking at the clock and feeling the pressure of time for our meetings. So anything to close on this before we go into our meetings? And I assume that you'll be joining us in the business meeting as well. Okay.
Just in addition, I do want to just address workplace safety. While this resolution doesn't specifically talk to workplace safety, there are increasing concerns from multiple departments, divisions within the county regarding safety in the workplace. And so I do want to speak to that as the board does consider this resolution, because it's not just elections. So some things that we're doing, we have a new employee emergency notification system in place, Washington County portal in the Everbridge platform for countywide employee notifications. The new tool was recently used to individually alert each member of the organization for our annual earthquake drill. We are in the process of securing a contract with a standardized countywide active threat response training. The county does not currently have this level of training in place. After careful review of several options, we are considering the ALICE active shooter preparedness training from a company called Navigate 360. ALICE combines online learning and in-person follow-up instruction by specialized trained staff from across the organization. Nearly 19 million people across the nation have utilized ALICE, including school districts, 5 in Oregon, businesses, and other local jurisdictions. In addition, our workplace violence and prevention policy and procedures are currently being updated and will be coming to your board at a future date. So I did want to mention these things. These actions, along with several actions, will be issued in a memo to your board, and I will also make sure that Clerk Moss adds that to the packet so our community is also informed on the safety measures we're taking here at the county.
Yep. And that broader topic of workplace safety, the same context that is in the whereases applies to that as well. So if there is a resolution that you would like to consider in the future, as you know, you can work with staff and sponsor such a resolution on our agenda for the future as well. Okay. We need to pause our work session here. We will come back later in this afternoon for our leadership communication. But now we need to segue over to our Housing Authority Board of Directors and our Board of County Commissioner business meeting. So we'll see you back here at least time certain at 1 p.m. Thank you.